Good morning. Today we are going to be letting my TBR jar choose my reads for the week. I did this a few weeks ago and it was so much fun, so we're doing it again. Now, I've been reading a lot more frequently recently and it's become much more of a habit, which I am loving. So, I'm actually going to be choosing 3 books to read this week instead of 2. I want 2 physical books and 1 book that I can read on Kindle Unlimited and also as an audio. So, that's what we're aiming for, and let's just start choosing. These are post-it notes and they do get quite stuck together, so it wasn't the best idea, but okay. Prompt 1. Can you see that? A book with a map. Okay. Well, since we read fantasy books, we have many options for this, so let me just grab them. We've got many options. These are all of our options. So, oh, we can't see that one. These are all of our options. Firstly, we have Mistborn, which is the first book in the Mistborn trilogy by Brandon Sanderson. I've been wanting to read these for a while, and I think these are more fantasy than they are romance. And I've been reading a lot of romantasy recently, so I might be in the mood to read this, but this is one of our options. Then we have An Ember in the Ashes, which is the first book in, I think, a 4 book series. We also have Babel, which is a dark academia book. I have not read any dark academia, so this will be new for me, but it is something that I do want to read at some point, so another option. We have Caraval as well, which is the first book in a trilogy, and I think there's also a spin off series as well based in this world. Then we have Heir of Fire. This is the next book in the Throne of Glass series for me because I am making my way through that series. I actually just finished reading The Assassin's Blade. Oh, The Assassin's Blade. Because I did just finish it, I don't think I want to continue the Throne of Glass series just yet. So we're going to put this Heir of Fire away as an option because I'm not in the mood to get back into the series just yet. We also have the first book in the Crescent City series. I don't want to read this until I've finished reading Throne of Glass, so I'm going to put that away as well. Which means we have 4 options. We've got Mistborn, An Ember in the Ashes, Babel, and Caraval. I am in the mood for fantasy, so I'm going to put Babel away. But then in terms of these 3, I don't know because I really want to read all of them. I think Mistborn. I think let's give this a go. Let's try it. This is our first option. I have been reading a lot of romantasy, and I think these verge more to the romantasy side more than fantasy, whereas this is more fantasy. So let's do this. Is this so? Okay. A book with a person's name in it. Okay, I know which book I'm reading for this. I'm going to read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I specifically put that prompt in so that I could choose this book. It also happens to be the only book that has a person's name in the title, so that's perfect. This is such a spring vibe for me. I feel like, first of all, the cover. It's a cozy fantasy. Emily Wilde is a professor and as she researches fairies, there's some romance in here. This just gives me all the spring feels. And since it has been feeling a bit more like spring recently, with the sun's been out, it's getting a bit warmer. This is perfect. So, this is option number 2 for sure. Not option, this is book number 2 that we've chosen. Let's choose prompt number 3. This book will be a Kindle book because I've chosen my 2 physical reads for the week. So let's see what we get. This is so stuck together. Okay. Can you see that? I don't think you can see that. A book from an author you have already read. Okay. So I have been reading The Legacy of Thesma. Is that the So we have two options on Kindle Unlimited. The first option is actually the Legacy of Thesma series. I read book one and two. Book one I loved. Book two, I enjoyed the friendships and I enjoyed like the end of the book, but I didn't love it as a whole. So I put a pause on the series. So we do have the option of reading the third book in that series, which is called Fate and Furies. So that is option number one. I have also just finished reading The Serpent and the Wings of Night. And the second book in that is, oh no, there's a novella called Six Scorched Roses. Is that available on Kindle? Let's have a look. Oh, it is. But it's a novella. Do I want to get an audio for a novella? I feel like it's a waste. Let's read the Fate and Furies, which is the third book in the House of Thesmont series, and at least that way we get closer to finishing that series as well, because I have not completed a series in a while, so it would be nice to get closer to that. So those are our three books that we're reading. We've got Mistborn, Emily Wells' Encyclopedia of Fairies, and then Fate and Furies. I think I will probably start with Mistborn because it is the chunkiest of the books, and because we are at the start of the weekend, I can spend a good amount of time just reading this. So that is what we're going to start with. Also, I want to mention I don't know too much about this series. I know it's fantasy. I know Brandon Sanderson is very well known in the fantasy world. Other than that, I don't know. So I like to go into my books not knowing much. I pretty much will know the general genre, maybe some of the tropes, and also any recommendations or reviews that I've heard of. Other than that, I don't know anything when I go into a book, and I don't like to because I feel like it changes your perception of the book before you've even started it. So let me read the blurb. For 1,000 years the ash fell. For 1,000 years the scar slaved in misery and lived in fear. For 1,000 years the Lord Ruler reigned with absolute power and ultimate terror, divinely invincible. Every attempted revolt has failed miserably. Yet somehow hope survives. A new kind of uprising is being planned, one that depends on the cunning of a brilliant criminal mastermind and the courage of an unlikely heroine, a scar street urchin, who must learn to master allomancy, the power of a mistborn. There were a lot of words in there that I don't understand because it's a new world, it's a fantasy world, but let's see how it goes. Oh, so this is the whole Mistborn saga. Apparently it's not a trilogy, so I think you have the main trilogy and then you have a few other books, and I'm pretty sure there are spin-offs as well to this world. So let's have a look at the map, since that's what made us choose this in the first place. So this is the first map. I think there are two. That's map one. And then we have map two, which I guess is the main map. Is that all of them? Yeah. Should I start reading the prologue to you? Okay. Sometimes I worry that I'm not the hero everyone thinks I am. The philosophers assure me that this is the time, that the signs have been met. But I still wonder if they have the wrong man. So many people depend on me. They say I will hold the future of the entire world on my arms. What would they think if they knew that their champion, the hero of ages, their savior, doubted himself? Perhaps they wouldn't be shocked at all. In a way, this is what worries me most. Maybe in their hearts they wonder just as I do. When they see me, do they see a liar? I'm now realizing this is the first book I've read in a while with like a main male character. Most of the books I've been reading are female main characters, so that might be different as well. But let's get started. Good morning. So I in fact did not read yesterday evening. I was in the mood to watch Netflix and go to sleep, which is exactly what I did. So I will be starting Mistborn today. I do have a few errands and things to run today as well, but I'm still hoping that I can at least make a dent in this and read for a couple of hours. This book is actually 643 pages. So it's a chunky book, and I may have overestimated how quickly I can read, but we're still going to start with this book and we'll see how it goes. So I have read the prologue and I've started reading part one. I am enjoying it at the moment. I definitely want to see where it goes. It is taking me a minute to understand the world and the characters because there's quite a lot going on. And I do find that at the beginning of any fantasy book, it does take you a minute to understand the world itself and kind of the history of it. So that is definitely taking me a minute to get into, but I am enjoying it so far and I look forward to continuing it. I do actually need to go run some errands now and I also want to go on a walk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause Mistborn and pick it back up later this evening, and instead I'm going to start reading Fate and Furies. So this is on Kindle Unlimited and I can also get it as an audio version. So I'm going to get the audio and then we're going to start that on my walk and get through a bit of it while I do my errands and stuff. Hello, so it's been a few hours and I have got to 13% of the way through Fate and Furies. Now, because it is the third book in this series, it's pretty easy to get back into it because I already know the history, I already know the world and the characters. So it's nice to just be able to jump back into it without having to think too much or to understand the world or anything like that. So that's where I'm at with that. And I'm just going to continue reading it in the background and listening to it as I go through my week. And then in terms of Mistborn, I am still very early on. I'm only on page 29. I am enjoying it, but I'm realizing that I made a mistake earlier. The prologue is from a male perspective, so I thought the whole book was from his perspective, but I think it's actually dual perspective because on the back it speaks about a heroine, and the first chapter is from a female perspective as well. So I think we've actually got dual perspective in here, which I did not realize. So that's fun because I always like reading books like that. But yeah, still very early on. I don't think I'm actually going to be able to read much for the rest of today because I have plans. So hopefully I can pick this back up tomorrow and throughout the week. Good morning. So it's been a few days, but I am actually 74% of the way through Fate and Furies. I am listening to this on audio and my listening speed is much quicker than my reading speed, which is part of why I'm getting through this quicker. But it's just a very easily digestible book and not in a bad way. It's still a fantasy world, but it's just not overly complicated. So it's quite easy to pick back up in terms of the plot and the characters and what's going on. And I think that's really helping me get through this and I'm enjoying it. This is the third book in the Legends of Thesmos series. So the first book is called Blood and Steel. I really enjoyed this book. The second book I didn't love. I found it wasn't as good as the first one. But this third book is picking it back up again and it's making me feel like the first book did. So I'm really enjoying that. I think this is probably going to be a 4-star read, but I am really enjoying this. I like the characters, the plot, the dynamics. One of my favorite thing about this series is the character dynamics. I just think they're so well done and really enjoyable to read. The only aspect I feel is missing from this third book is there are a couple of characters that we know from book 1 and 2. I feel like we don't see them much. We've heard them mentioned a few times, but they only really come into the plot at about 70% of the way through. So that's the only thing I feel like is missing. I do know that there is a spin off book or series. I'm not sure if it's a standalone or it's going to be a series, which is based on these two characters. I'm not sure what the timelines are though, so maybe we learn more about their stories in that book in this timeline. But either way, I just feel like that is something that is missing from this book. Other than that, I'm really enjoying it. And I do think that if I don't finish it today, then I'll probably finish it tomorrow, in which case I will then pick up the fourth book and read and listen to that one as well and just complete that series because most of the books on my TBR are the first book in a series, which is great that I've got a lot of series to look forward to, but I need to make sure that I finish them as well. Now, in terms of Mistborn, now I have read some of it. I think I'm on page 80, and when I looked on my Fable, that was 12% of the way through. So I'm getting through it slowly. It is a chunky book, which feels a bit daunting, to be honest, when I pick it up. But the story itself, I'm enjoying. I think we're at the point of an inciting incident. So things are hopefully going to start to pick up a bit more now, which might help me get more into the story. It is world building. There are like histories and laws to the world and the magic systems that you're kind of picking up and learning as you go along, which definitely means like it takes a minute to understand what's going on and why things are a certain way. So that might be part of why I'm a bit slower with this book. I am enjoying it. I'm definitely intrigued and want to know what happens next. I really like one of our main characters, Kessler. I think he's a great character. He's quite funny too. I'm liking him. Our other main character, Vin, I'm feeling a bit neutral to her at the moment because I feel like we don't know much about her quite yet. So I'm hoping we get to explore her a bit more and just get to know more of her in the earlier stages of this book. But those are my thoughts so far. I'm hoping to do a reading session this evening. And there are 5 parts in this book, and I'm still on part 1. So I'm hoping I can finish part 1 today. But those are my thoughts so far. Good morning. It is time for an update. Firstly, I have finished reading Fate and Furies, which is the 3rd book in the Legends of Thesmar series. I gave this a 4-star. However, I think I might bump that up to a 4.25 or a 4.5 star rating because I really enjoyed it. One of my favorite things about this series is the friendships and the character dynamics, and I felt it was missing a bit in the 2nd book. But this 3rd book really picked it back up, which made me enjoy it so much more. And also, a lot of the time in fantasy novels, and fantasy series, all of the character dynamics can sometimes get a bit confusing or overwhelming or just take away from the plot too much. However, in this series, I really enjoyed them, and I think the dynamics have made sense and they've just been really enjoyable to experience. So I've loved that. And I have started and am 74% of the way through the 4th book, which I've flown through this. Like I mentioned before, these are very easily digestible, which I love, especially when you're listening to them, because I have been listening to these on audio. And whilst I also enjoy high fantasy books as well, I definitely think there is a time and a place for these more easily digestible fantasy books, especially in audio form. It's just a lot easier to pick back up in the story and the plot and the characters when it is easier to get back into, like this one, for example. So I've really enjoyed it, and I will complete that probably today. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, I did, however, realize that I actually accidentally missed one of the books. So there is a book that is supposed to be read after the 3rd book before the 4th, but it's like a spin-off standalone. So you just get a bit more history and context of a couple of the characters that have been mentioned from book 1 to 3, but don't actually come into the plot until book 4. So it just gives a bit of their context and their history. So that is something that I might try and read at another point and add that to my TBR. But yeah, I realized that I didn't read that until maybe yesterday. And by that point, I was already quite of the way through this 4th book. And then there is a spin-off series. One is called Iron and Embers, which is already out. And the second book to that spin-off series comes out at the end of July 2025. So in a few months' time. So I will be reading those as well, which I'm very much looking forward to. I also want to get the physical copies of the Legends of Thesmar series and perhaps also the spin-offs. I tried to keep my physical copies limited to ones that I really enjoy, that I really love, that have really influenced my reading journey, and just ones that are generally 4-star plus. And this series is one of the ones that I do want to have physical copies of. However, the spin-off series Iron and Embers is only available in hardback, and I think the sequel to that will only be available in hardback for a while. So I might have to wait some time before I can get the physical copies of those because I want them all in paperback. But I can definitely get the paperbacks of the original series, which I'm looking forward to. And because I enjoyed this series that much and just the world that was created, the plot, the characters. So I looked at the author, and they actually have another series a 4-book series which is already out, which is called The Curse of the Siren Queen. And the first book is available on Kindle Unlimited already. And I think all of them are, but I haven't checked the rest of them. I've only checked the first one. So I will be hopefully reading that soon because I think I will enjoy that too. It sounds like quite a fun read. So I'm really excited that I found another author that I really enjoy that I can look out for. So that's where I'm at with those. And yeah, I'm hoping to complete the 4th book today. Then with Mistborn, I am actually unfortunately going to DNF this series. Well, it's going to be a soft DNF because I realized that I'm actually not in the mood for high fantasy. And so I've been really struggling to get into this book, and I realized that was why. It's because I'm not in the mood for a high fantasy book or story. It's just not something that I'm enjoying right now. Whilst I'm intrigued by the plot and the world, it's not something that I can really get into at the moment. And so rather than forcing myself to try and complete the book, I'm just going to soft DNF it and pick it up maybe later on in the year because I do actually have the trilogy collection. So yeah, this is hopefully something I will pick up later in the year. Nothing wrong with the book, it's just not what I'm in the mood to read, which is unfortunate because I really thought I would enjoy this a lot more, but it's just not what I want to read right now. So I will hopefully be reading that later on in the year. Also, I will be removing the whole trilogy from my TBR cart just because it's a soft DNF, so I will pick it up at another time when I'm in the mood for it, rather than keeping it on my cart and feeling like I have to read it. So that is where we're at with Mistborn. But because we are soft DNFing this, I will therefore be picking up Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This was so much fun and definitely more so what I'm in the mood for. This is a cozy fantasy. We have Emily Wilde, who is a researcher of fairies, and she goes to this town to continue her research. However, I think she discovers like some dark magic, and also she has a love interest, so there's some romance as well. But this is definitely more what I'm in the mood for. And this just gives such spring vibes. This is very high up on my TBR for spring, so I'm looking forward to reading this. It's part of a trilogy as well, so if I enjoy this, and I have 2 more books that I can read as well. And it's much thinner. I think it's like 300 and something pages. So it's 317 pages, which is really what I'm in the mood for. I don't think I want a chunky book at the moment. I just want something easy, cozy reads. I'm really in the mood for cozy fantasy with a bit of romance and some adventure. So this sounds perfect. So I'm really looking forward to this. Also, I forgot to mention that this book is basically written in journal entry format. So you essentially have these entries throughout the book, and that's how you learn the story. So I'm assuming this is Emily Wilde's journal entries, and that's how you go through the book. So I'm looking forward to that because that's a new format that I've never read before. So firstly, I'm really enjoying the journal style of this book as it's definitely new to me, but I'm loving the fact that it just feels much more personal and easier to connect with our main character. We start off the book with Emily's travel and arriving to the town where she plans to do her investigation and research, and we get some of her initial interactions with the townspeople, which helps to understand more about her and also this world. However, my favorite thing so far has to be the interactions with the Fae and just learning more about them and the lore of this world through different comments and also actual experiences of the Fae with Emily herself. So far, this is definitely giving the cozy fantasy vibes that I was looking for. I am hoping that the plot picks up a bit, but at the moment, we're just setting more of the background and the lore and the history and just learning more about our main character and this world, which I'm definitely really enjoying. Hello, so I am 25% of the way through, so I'm still quite early on, but I'm enjoying it at the moment. I'm really liking how you get kind of these like footnotes at the bottom of some of the pages, which just reference like other things in the world, maybe some history and context to what is being explored, to the fae and the lore of this particular world. So I'm really enjoying that. We have just had Emily's friend slash academic rival arrive to her location, and we've had hints of him before where they've had some interactions and she's mentioned him, but he is now in the same location as her, and I'm pretty sure it's like a rivals to lovers situation, I think. So I'm excited to see how that goes, but we've just had that kind of introduction and a bit of their interactions with one another, which has been fun. Now I'm hoping it picks up a little bit because at the moment not much has happened. We are nearing a third of the way through the book, so I'm hoping some events occur and we can really get into the plot soon. But my favorite thing so far about this book has to be the way that the Fae are introduced and shown to us. So not only through a couple of interactions that Emily herself has in this new village, which I have loved, but also just the comments that she will mention about other interactions that she knows of or other things about the world and the lore and the history of this world. So I'm really, really enjoying the way that those are subtly being dropped and we're being introduced to these different types of Fae and how the Fae exist in this world. So I'm really loving that so far, but yeah, I'm hoping it picks up shortly. Hello, so we have got 100 pages left of Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. My thoughts so far are, firstly, we just had a huge interaction with the Fae, and that has to be my favourite thing about this book, is the way that the author is integrating the Fae world and interactions into it. At first, it was kind of like smaller interactions and mentions and comments of the Fae, and then also the large interaction that we just had. I just love the way that those have been integrated into the story. I really, really enjoy it. This is written in journal format from Emily Wilde's perspective. However, we just had a journal entry written from the MMC perspective. Usually I would love that. However, I don't love the MMC. He's okay. I don't hate him either, but I don't love him. He's just kind of there. And same with the FMC. I don't love her. I don't hate her. She's also just kind of there. I feel like because I don't love the main two characters, it's kind of making the book feel a little bit hollow in a sense, because they're just the way that we're getting the story told to us, but they're not necessarily not that they're not important, they're just not interesting. They're not, I'm not loving them as individuals or even as like interactions with one another either. So I feel like that is making the book not as enjoyable. My favorite part is definitely the Fae aspect of it. I do, as I said, only have 100 pages left, so I'm hoping I can finish that today and I will give you my complete thoughts on the book. But that is where I'm at the moment. I also feel like some of the side characters could have been explored much more and we just didn't get that. So that's something that I feel like would have been fun to have. And also some of the Fae that experiences that we had earlier on in the book, they kind of like dwindled out. So I wish they would have been more to the forefront. Maybe they will be in the rest of the book, but I don't think so. So those are my thoughts so far, and I will let you know what I think once I finish this book. The next time I speak to you, I will have finished it. It's taken me a while to read just in general. I feel like I've been reading quite slowly in April and I'm not sure why, but I'm still enjoying the book. There are just aspects that are maybe making it a bit less enjoyable. Good morning. It is the next day now. Yesterday, I actually went and got my hair done, which I have never had my hair dyed or anything before. So this is very new to me, but I really like it. I felt like I was in the mood to get it done because it's spring and I wanted something new for spring and summer. So I got that done yesterday. And then I actually did continue reading a little bit in the evening, but I didn't actually finish this book until this morning. It's taken me a while to read, and it's nothing to do with the book. I'm not necessarily in a reading slump. I feel like because the weather has been better, it's feeling a bit more like spring, and I'm picking up my other hobbies again, especially sketching and hopefully painting again soon. And so that's just meant that I've been reading a little bit less. But either way, I have officially finished Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. Overall, this is a 3-star read for me. I initially thought, as I was reading all the way through, I thought this would be maybe a 3.5 star. However, as I finished the book, I just had a couple of, not necessarily issues, just things that I didn't love about the book. And I've mentioned one or two of them before, but I will maintain the fact that I love the way that the Fae have been introduced into this world. I initially enjoyed that it was set as that the layout of the book was in a journal format because it was new to me. However, as I continued to read, I realized that it actually made me feel quite distant from the story, and it took me out of it a little bit just because it didn't feel like, as the reader, I was part of the story necessarily. So I think that definitely had an impact on my experience of it and maybe brought the rating down a little bit. Additionally, I still don't love the main two characters, Emily or Wendell. They were okay. They were just the way that we were being told the story, and I didn't like their relationship with one another either. It felt kind of a bit random, and like there wasn't much backstory or much emotion involved. I didn't enjoy it. I know there is a second and third book in this series, so it's possible that is explored a bit more in those. But for the first book, I didn't really enjoy that, which definitely brought down the rating of the book quite a bit, because you have to like at least one of the main characters for the book to be a really good book, and I just didn't. They were both kind of just there as a way for me to get the story, but not necessarily an enjoyable part of the story. So I think that definitely made the reading experience quite different to what I thought it would be. But overall, it was a cozy fantasy. It was a quicker read. It was a shorter read, not necessarily quick, just because I've been slow at reading recently. I did enjoy it. It was still, like I said, a 3-star read, which is not bad at all. So that is where we are at with Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. We have finished this book. I don't think I'll be continuing with the series just because I don't love the main characters. As much as I really enjoyed the way that the Fae were explored in this and the world of the Fae, it's not enough for me to continue. Like, I have to really enjoy the main characters in order to continue the story. So I don't think I will be picking up the next books anytime soon. I actually realized that the Legends of Thesmar series, the book that I missed out, at first, I thought it was supposed to be read after the third book and before the fourth, but now when I searched it, it's actually supposed to be read after the first book and before the second. I missed that one out completely, so I'm hoping to pick that up soon. And then Iron and Embers, which is the first book in the spin-off series, I found out it's set 5 years after the Legends of Thesmar series, so it's a few years later. And I do hope to pick that one up soon. I do have quite a few other books on my TBR at the moment, so it might not be any time in this season, but it's definitely one that I have got to read because I'm really excited about that. The two characters that are in that story, I really want to know more about. So I'm very excited to read that at some point, and I'm hoping I can read that one before the second book comes out at the end of July. One thing that I've really been enjoying over the past few weeks is actually listening to fantasy playlists in the background whilst I'm reading. So I tend to listen to instrumental ones. There are two main ones that I listen to. They were created by other people, and I will link them in the description below. But one of them is more of like an upbeat fantasy read, which I actually started listening to fantasy music, which I actually started listening to when I started reading the Throne of Glass series, and it was so much fun. So they're definitely more of an upbeat type. And then there's another playlist that I found recently, which was fun to listen to with as like a cozy fantasy read. When I was reading Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, I actually listened to the cozy fantasy playlist, and it was so much fun. I just feel like it gives a more enjoyable experience. Also, sometimes I find that I'm getting distracted when I'm reading, and so if I put on some music, that only instrumental music that matches the vibe of the book, it really helps me just enjoy it that much more. So that is something that I've really been enjoying recently as well, and that definitely made the whole experience much more enjoyable. So I've been loving that. And I think the past few days it's actually been quite sunny, so it's been nice to read outside. It is apparently raining the whole of next week, so hopefully we get the spring and summer weather back soon and I can do that more often. But that was really, really enjoyable to do. In terms of Mistborn, I'm going to say this again because I feel like it needs to be said. There was nothing wrong with the book. I just wasn't in the mood for a high fantasy. I hope I'm more in the mood for a high fantasy maybe in autumn and winter time, and then I can pick it up again, because I was intrigued by the premise and the main characters. I just couldn't get into it right now. I feel like at the moment in spring I want something a bit lighter, maybe a bit of a shorter book or more romantasy rather than high fantasy. So I do hope to pick that back up at some point later this year. But that is it for this video. I really enjoy doing these types of videos where I use my prompts to choose my books for the week. They're really fun to do. So I hope to do it a bit more often and when I can. But that is everything for this video. I hope you enjoyed and I will see you next time. Bye!